Y'all ready to get your creative on? Because it's that time again. It's time for another episode of Create or Die. I'm your host, Ike Allred. So, I've done a lot of thinking, a lot of internalizing, a lot of soul searching, if you will, and I've been asking myself some questions like, what's it all for? Why do I do it? Why do I continue to push? Why is it that I have this need to create that is literally unquenchable? Like, I cannot stop creating. I talk to friends, coworkers who have some outlets that they can just go and do, like play the new Zelda, or go train for a marathon, or whatever. Now, it's not to say I don't have a life outside of this, but a good portion of my life is spent just creating. It's a good thing. I love it. I enjoy it. I have been blessed or cursed, however you want to look at it, with a little ailment I call creative ADD, where I find joy in so many different areas of creativity, from illustration to animation to video editing to programming and development, which I know very little about, but I'm interested in it, to woodworking, and the list just goes on and on. And I hear people like Seth Godin and other smart people say, you gotta niche down, however you want to pronounce it, and you need to become an expert in that one thing. You can't be all to everyone. And I agree with that. I just have a hard time putting that into practice myself, because I love switching gears and moving from one thing to another. It just excites me. There's nothing better than to open up a new program that you've never used before and maybe watch a couple of primer tutorials to get a feel for what's possible, see some inspiration, and then go and try to make it happen. And then I get so excited about it, I want to share it with others. So I make tutorials, and they're not like, hey, I'm the expert at this thing, so take my advice. It's like, hey, look what I've figured out, maybe it'll help you, type of stuff. Back to where this all started, the soul searching and the why. And I don't necessarily have an answer, but I can say that continuing to push myself, create new things, stumble across new characters, new ideas, make money off of something that I'm able to create to help someone else, provide for my family, those are all things that get me jazzed about creating. For a long time now, I've told myself, ever since getting into the creative field, which officially happened back in like 2005, so it's been a few years now. Ever since then, I've told myself, like, man, I do this for free. I don't ever want to retire. That being said, we're not always going to be able to choose whether or not we retire. The company you're working for may go under. You may get laid off. Your health may not keep up with you. Hence my decision to not just rely on my day job. I'm working to build this Create or Die brand to be that outlet for me for the long run. I can, to some degree, control my future, and the fact that I have something to live for and something to continue to push myself measure myself against. I mean, in the end, we're only in competition with ourselves. It's easy to compare ourselves with others. We see these amazing portfolios on Instagram or ArtStation or Behance and it's easy to get frustrated. Like, I can do that. Why didn't I think of that? Or why don't I have this amazing grid of images? Mine are all over the place, and some of them are sketches, and some of them in my tired, delirious state I thought were good when I uploaded it, but then the next day realized that maybe it wasn't as good as I thought. But as one of my mentors, Mr. Don McDonald, would always say, we're showing it all, warts and all. And so that's kind of what I subscribe to. And so, like, right now, you're seeing the raw, unscripted Ike, the being vulnerable here. Normally I have some kind of outline for these podcasts so that they're coherent and I can slap a fancy title on them and you know what you're going to get. This one's not one of those episodes. This is one of those kind of self-reflective, soul-searching, kind of inner dialogue type episodes that maybe echoes some of the things that you might be experiencing. I am excited to announce that this hustle, this extra side work, contract work, has helped me achieve one of my goals. I've always said, or at least since the creation of this podcast, said that it's more about quality time than quantity time with your kids, friends, family, whatever. And while I've been working a lot, I've successfully attained one of my goals, that of purchasing a boat. That's right, one of them speed boats that you can pull a skier on, do some wake surfing, and we'll be able to get the whole family on there. And I've talked, an episode or two ago about how much I look forward to spending that quality time with my family, all in the same 20 square feet or whatever it is, and just get that outlet that I talked about maybe not having as much of, because as a father and husband and sole provider of a family, a big family, I don't know if I've mentioned it before on this podcast, but I have 9 children and it gets expensive. And so hence the hustle, hence the need to always either be creating or providing for my family in some other way, experiences or teaching moments or just love. So I like to try to find things that we can do together. And boating has manifested itself as one of those things that we're going to do. We're a boating family now. Got that boat on order. It's going to be here early July, and we're not going to let it affect the podcast and the things that we're doing. But that's just it. This hustle has afforded me something that my day job alone might not have been able to do, at least not as comfortably. So I'm excited about that little nugget there. So shoot for something that you want, aim for it, and you go get you some of that. Work backwards from it. Like, I need to make X amount of money a month to pay for this thing that is going to create amazing experiences for me and my family. And that's not to say that you need things to create amazing experiences. Now, on this subject of hustle and being the best that we can be, it brings up maybe a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, or an observation, if nothing else. But like I've mentioned in the past, I do a bit of doom scrolling on the TikTok when I'm otherwise busy and can't be creating, I'll dial up the TikTok, like I've said in the past, I've trained it to serve up a lot of interesting little tidbits, knowledge nugs. And for the most part, those are great. And my mind's been opened. I've been introduced to new thought leaders and books that have definitely enriched my life. But at the same time, it seems like I've tapped into this kind of alpha male bro culture of physical fitness nuts who are obviously salespeople, and some of the things they say just crack me up. Like, when I see a man who's fit and takes care of himself, it tells me 6 things immediately about that person. That person can do hard things. They're not into instant gratification. They can see things through. And I'm just like, give me a freaking break, Like, sure, some of that is true, but for the things that really matter, at least according to Ike, you're not going to get that from the look of a person, that they are ripped or go to the gym or are part of that bro culture. You give me someone who's soft around the midsection and losing some hair, and they're humble and they're passionate about their craft. And for a lot of us creators, that just happens to be sitting in front of a computer or at an easel or whatever, and it's hard to dedicate 3-4 hours a day to get super ripped and hopped up on steroids or whatever, and intimidate people into giving you that sale. Do you agree? Is there too much of that? Like, hey bro, just wake up at 3 a.m., hit the gym for 4 hours, deny yourself any food whatsoever, and be pissed, and it's okay to belittle people who aren't in perfect shape or aren't super athletic in their 40s or whatever. I mean, I played the sports. I did that stuff. I was in good shape at one time, but now, I'm sacrificing that time that I look at as kind of selfish, especially in a position like mine where I've got this large family, and again, like I said, sole provider for. And if I'm gonna say, hey wife, I need to go spend some more time at the gym, so you got the kids, right? Okay, see ya. And I'm gonna do that every single day. It's not right. So that's not to give myself excuses for not being healthier. I need to eat better. I need to drink more water. I need to take a walk at lunch during, the work day, so that it doesn't affect my my family time or my creative time where I'm working to provide for my family or build this brand. But anyways, that, going off on a tangent there, but I'm just curious, am I the only one who gets a little fed up of, this, what's his name, Michael Goggins and all these other bros who say there's no excuse, you could go to the gym, effing go to the gym or whatever. Come on, there's more to life. And not everybody needs to be a salesperson to be successful, or at least that type of a salesperson. The type of salesperson that I try to be, someone who's relatable, approachable, big soft teddy bear type of guy, and someone whose work backs up the ROI and gives you a reason to want to buy what it is I'm selling. So yeah, let the quality work do the talking, not your smart ass mouth, right? Because you've got it all figured out and you've hit the gym harder than anyone else, and you know all of the sports references so that you can talk to anybody and sell snow to an Eskimo. Like, that's some kind of accomplishment. It's like, okay, so you're screwing people and you're proud of that. All right, if that's how you want to be remembered, I'd rather be remembered as someone who was kind and genuine and relatable and created stuff that other people can relate to or leverage to help them improve their life, improve their business, improve their brand. However you want to slice it or dice it. That's what I'm talking about. So again, tell me, drop me some comments. Tell me that, hey, quit being fat and just go to the gym. Am I wrong here? Just saying, I think we've got our priorities a little screwed up. I could get political if you want, but it's not that kind of podcast where, I'm just concerned that the world is a little too divisive, a little too judgmental, a little too, hey, if you don't do things the way I do them, then you're doing it wrong. Yeah, so that's all we're going to say about that, okay? So on to the next subject, the next thing that I've been talking to myself about in my brain space, okay? And one of those things, the next thing, is around quality, producing amazing stuff. And how do you do that? In the last episode, I talked about my creative process, and good, amazing stuff can be attained through that process or others. But it also is just about getting things done, and done is better than perfect, I say a lot. And I didn't coin that by any means. But in this world of commercial art, and especially if you're burning the midnight oil at a job that maybe feels a little thankless, other people you might get the credit for some of the successes, or creative is just an afterthought. And I'm not speaking from experience. I'm just saying that when you're burnt out or creating just becomes a job or a thing you do, then it's hard to want to push it farther or think outside of the box, because we all, at least I think so, we all have these solutions for different design problems that come up. This specific layout that we do for a display ad, or a hero section of a website, or a pose for a character, whatever it might be, and we have a tendency to lean hard on those and just phone in the project. And if you haven't heard that term, phoning it in, before, which some of my Gen Z friends out there may not have, essentially means that you're not giving the project the attention that it deserves, to the point where you're getting there in person, elbows deep doing it. Instead, you're just phoning it in. You're just calling it in, saying, okay, just do this, do that. And we've done this before. We've ridden that pony, as I like to say. So I struggle with that sometimes. I would imagine we all do. Tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe you're able to bust some amazing thing out every time, mouse cursor touches the canvas. I don't know. And so how do we know if we push something far enough? Now, obviously, we have time limits, we have budget constraints, all of these different things that we have to juggle or work within. And we also have to have a life. And maybe you do want to go to the gym. I don't know. But, which I do, I just don't, I got other priorities. All right, I keep going back to that. I apologize. So what are some things that I do to help break out of that mold of things are being phoned in, or I'm just going with my go-to solution for whatever design problem. Maybe it's I always use a specific font, or I lay out my titles one of 3 different ways, and I don't give enough thought to the brand and the audience and whether or not what I'm creating helps reinforce that, or even worse, undermine the brand because you're doing something that is definitely off-brand. So here are some things that I do. So for one, I think it's good to, at least for me personally, and now if you don't have the ability to draw or sketch, maybe this won't work for you. But when I'm trying to approach something new, rather than jump directly into Illustrator or Figma or Photoshop even, and start laying out this design, instead, go to pencil and paper, or iPad and Apple Pencil or something, where you don't have those clean, pixel perfect tools to use that will distract you from just being open to what this could be and looking at it from multiple different angles. A lot of times we're too concerned with making things perfect, or it takes a certain amount of time to line up your boxes and find the right font and the right size and color, and it just kind of eats away at your ability to be creative. Now, that's not to say it can't happen. I just find that it's more successful for me, and I'm not the first to come up with this or to proclaim this. Get analog first, and I call drawing on the iPad analog as well, so that works. But do yourself a bunch of thumbnails, scribble. Sometimes some happy accident happens and you're like, what if we did turn the title in 3D space, or I like the sketchiness of what's going on here, and I wasn't intending to do something that felt grungy or had some organic movement to it, but hey, let's try it. And that opened my mind to it. Okay, so sketching, thumbnailing first can help. Number 2 on the list would be get yourself some inspiration. I think I've said in the past that Pinterest is my go-to. Like, I'm constantly scrolling through the Pinterest feed, or when I'm looking for inspiration on page layout or whatever, do a search, save those to a board, pin it, and for website inspiration, for example, I've got like 600 pins in there. I've got one for illustration, I've got one for graphic design, I've got one for package design, which is kind of a part of graphic design. So got to be inspired. And it's not to say that you're going to copy something. I may be pulling from a dozen different concepts and then adding something new. Or if you're working with an established brand, then you're asking yourself, like, okay, that's cool, but how could I apply that to this brand I'm working with? Like, in this inspiration piece, there are these different modules that are laid out in a box as boxes, but the brand that I'm working with, uses hexagons as a big design element. And so what if I use hexagons for those boxes? So that's a pretty simple example, but you get the idea. And then number 3 technique that I like to use, and a lot of times I'm using all of these in one project, but let's use 3D for example. So, you've sculpted this character in ZBrush, you've retopologized it, you've brought it into Cinema 4D or Blender, you're starting to add textures that feel like cloth, you want to add imperfections, you want to make it feel alive, have one of those Frankenstein moments. It's alive! No, that was horrible. I apologize. But, you know what I'm saying? And to just do that, like 99% of the things I create in 3D, I've first gotten analog with it and done some type of sketch. So we've done that. But then we get it to a point where it feels like a digitally created perfect object, and it can be difficult to believably make something feel dirty and raw and organic and not CG. And so what I'll employ is a little technique I like to call the draw over. So that's where you've pushed it to a pretty good place and you can do this several draw overs. In fact, I recommend it. But you push your model, your 3D design to a certain place and kind of hitting a wall. Render that out. You take that into Photoshop or into Procreate on the iPad or whatever and paint over or draw over it. And what's nice is you can try things out. Like, well, what if I tried a little bit of facial hair on this character, or I drew a quick rip in the character's jersey, or I drew some little flyaways in the hair. What does that look like? Or I'm gonna add some tattoos to this character that would take a long time to create. Clean artwork, and then UV map your 3D object and apply it, and apply all the right textures and blends and materials and whatever. So before you invest the time in doing that, do a draw over, see how it feels. And if it's on a different layer, you can toggle the visibility of that layer. Tell yourself, like, did this plus the image or not? And if it's a not, then erase it or create a new layer on top of that to try a different direction. And you can try those pretty quickly. Try some different lighting. I remember a competition I was a part of back in, 2011, so a long time ago. It was a moto competition to create an avatar of this popular web series that was going on, and I created this girl character and just put my heart and soul into it, worked on it. It was one of those competitions where you had to post in the forum and be real active online to be considered as a qualified applicant, because that was part of the whole thing, is to grow the community. So I would upload a work in progress image and say to whoever was checking out my stuff, this isn't perfect, but it's probably as good as it's gonna get, and I don't know if I'll have the time to push it any further. And the community was so amazing, and I still just look back so fondly on this experience. But some of my competitors even took my image, did a quick draw over, like, have you thought about doing some rim lighting? I think that would really take this to the next level. And they would do that and upload it in the comments, and I was like, oh wow, thanks so much, you're right, that's a great idea. I'll go back and sacrifice a little bit more time away from my family to make it that much better. And literally this happened 3 or 4 times where I was like, okay guys, I put a lot of time into this and this is probably as good as it's gonna get. Boom. And then they would say, so good job, man, but if you did this, that would be the cat's meow. They probably didn't use that term, but you can imagine. And long story short, by the grace of the good Lord, I actually won that competition. It was so cool, and was cheered on by these guys who were definitely my seniors in every way. Experience, age, wisdom, looks, physique, whatever. As you've seen in recent episodes, I've done different product placements for food or beverage items that no one's asking for. but I did them anyways. And if I had something nearby, I'd do one right now. Okay. Oh, maybe I do. Kroger seltzer water. When you want something sparkly, you get yourself a Kroger. So those are my 3 ways of taking something that is good and making it great. The antithesis to phoning it in. And if I'm using words incorrectly, I appreciate it if you would comment and let me know, because we're all trying to help each other out here, okay? We're being real up in here, okay? So there are other ways, and I could add to it, the one little bonus thing is obviously to share it with other creatives and get their feedback, how they think that you might improve what it is you're working on. And again, not everything you do is going to be a home run. It's just the reality of it, and don't beat yourself up over that. But on the flip side, don't ever be okay with it either. Don't settle for mediocrity. The drive within to create, that it continue to thrive and consume you, and with everything that you create, make it better, push it to the next level. I appreciate you hanging in there with me on what's been a little different of an episode. Like I said, unscripted. I had some ideas in my mind, but nothing up on the screen to read or prompt me to move on to the next thing. So if it didn't make sense, then I apologize. I just want to remind you that that's what you signed up for when you decided to listen or view this podcast. You signed up for something real, something different, because I ain't afraid of being different. I obviously am. I just talked against the bro culture, which, people have died for doing in the past. Anyways, I appreciate you hanging in there with me. Remember to check out the website, createordie.net. Tell your friends, tell your family. Let's get the word out. Let's continue to help people become more creative and less fearful of what other people think. Until next time, my friends, keep on creating. Create or die.